Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue think this slate dropping unrealistic match. 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal. Yo, boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way. Sports content for the reals to fill the day. Good afternoon, y'all. It is Tuesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and we here for episode 43 of the 3-Point Blitz. That's right, folks. We've made it all the way to 43 episodes. We're 7 episodes away from the milestone 50 mark, folks. And we're coming at this episode fresh off the NFL wildcard weekend with an exciting slate of games for us. So without any further ado, we're going to dive right into it quickly. And that actually starts us off with the rant of the week. But real quickly, as always, big shout out to the Hardcore Sports Network for letting us stream on their platform. And you got the Nicky Steves channel as well. And this is Greg Ajani. This was a different account now, stopping by in the chat. And we ready to go, man. So we're going to start this thing off with the rant of the week because I've been noticing something particularly in relation to football. There's been one quarterback who come playoff time hasn't been the best performer. That's been kind of sliding for it. And that's Justin Herbert. Now, there are some people who I know are calling out Justin Herbert or acknowledging his record in the playoffs now of 0-3. Acknowledging that the Chargers struggle to win big games with him. Now, that could in part be because of the team around him, and I do think that's part, because any situation's really a team sport, no matter who it is. Whether you're talking the quarterbacks that notably got criticized for playoff flameouts throughout the years, or even recently, such as Lamar Jackson, in all aspects to some degree, the team plays a role in it. But I notice when it comes to, say, Lamar Jackson or even Josh Allen to a lesser degree, opposed to Justin Herbert, Herbert doesn't get as much criticism. Which, I mean, now we're at the point now where this is his third playoff start, and they haven't been able to win a game at all. And the last 2 ones were just ugly performances by Herbert. The first go-around against the Jaguars in 2022, the whole team collapsed. So I'm not necessarily going to blame that on one player. That was a team thing for the Chargers. But the last 2 years, when they've been to the playoffs, they flamed out in the opening round and did not play good in either situation, particularly Sunday against the Patriots, because Justin Herbert did not the whole Chargers offense, for that matter, did not play good at all. And this was a game that the Patriots really didn't play that great either, which I'll get to that more in a minute. But look at it. Justin Herbert got dropped 6 times. Now, that is in part the offensive line coming back to bite them. But now this is the 3rd time you're talking about, 3rd one and done for Justin Herbert. And plus, to be fair, the Chargers got an interception on Drake May. Drake May did not look like that he was that great either. He got sacked 5 times. He looked like he had some playoff jinx, which means this was a winnable game for the Chargers, and they just did not do it. They just could not find a way to beat the Patriots, who were not that great. You thought maybe they could have got the run game going a little bit more, but they just didn't. And now, granted, to be fair, as Arku said, they have been missing 2 tackles. I've been saying that all season. But now that Justin Herbert going one and done is a pattern, you do have to some degree start to criticize him. And not to mention his record in big games on prime time against teams over 500 is not that great either as a starter. At some point, it has now been 6 seasons he's been in the NFL. At some point in time, you got to start seeing the quarterback as well. It's, you can always blame the defense for not holding up, the offensive line, but eventually the quarterback's got to get some of the blame too. Well, really the whole team does, but I notice how Lamar Jackson always gets the blame by some people. How even Josh Allen sometimes gets the blame. Or if you remember as an Eagles fan when Donovan McNabb was heavily criticized for the playoff failures. Or let's be real, if Jalen Hurts did not have those 2 Super Bowl runs and that Super Bowl MVP, he would have been getting the same type of criticism Donovan McNabb in more recent years Lamar Jackson gets. But Justin Herbert, he kind of slides. So I'm just saying, like, there's a bit of a double standard here. I mean, a lot of us consider Justin Herbert a top 10 quarterback, so a talented ball player, but come playoff time, just struggling to win those games. So at some point in time, I feel like Justin Herbert's got to get some of the flack too. So I'll say this. Herbert's a good quarterback, top 10 for sure, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. But come playoff time in big games, the common denominator is they don't find ways to win. And at some point in time, we got to start questioning Justin Herbert's ability to lead the Chargers to deep runs. So that's my quick rant of the week right there. I'll talk more about that game in a little bit. Before we actually dive into the games, just a quick one. Mike, I didn't get to this because this happened after last week's episode, but Mike McDaniel was fired by the Dolphins. I said it was possible it might still happen, and ultimately it did. And we got AJ doesn't put any blame on himself, and the Eagles playoff loss for the 49ers. Who's at fault for the Eagles losing? The whole team, including, right, the coaching, one of the main roles, but the whole team as a whole plays a role. And I'm not just going to blame one player specifically or one side of the ball. Everyone is a factor. If the Texans had a decent offense, I would pick them in the AFC. Right, and that's referred to the Texans-Steelers game, which I definitely agree with you on that one. Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah, because C.J. Stroud had 5 fumbles, and yet they still won. If C.J. Stroud was still playing, even a shell of what he was his rookie season, when he was Rookie of the Year and the Texans shockingly won the AFC South, they would easily be contenders, probably even have home field advantage if Stroud was still playing up to rookie form. But, I mean, that's why I don't buy the Houston Texans as Super Bowl contenders. Even though they got a great defense and a great coach, I got to see more from C.J. Stroud. And I'll get more to that. But as far as McDaniel goes, look, well-deserved firing. I said it last week, and it ultimately happened. He underachieved with what he had, and the Dolphins, I guess they wanted to wait a little bit. I don't know why, but they waited till after Black Monday to make the decision. So, it happened. Mike McDaniel's gone, and now he's being interviewed by the Cleveland Browns. That would be typical Cleveland Browns. It would be like hiring Eric Mangini all over again if they do that. But, yeah, the Dolphins obviously had no choice. They parted ways with McDaniels, and we'll see where they go from here. But moving right along, let's start talking about the wild card games itself. We started off with we had a lot of good games, particularly Saturday into Sunday, and it started off with the Rams and Panthers. Now, I don't know what some people were thinking when they had the Rams 10-plus point favorites. Even I came on here last week and said that was too much. And ultimately, now in regards to the 10-point odds, that did end up being too high because this was a good competitive game. There were even points in time we thought maybe the Panthers might win the upset. And I got to give credit where credit's due. Ultimately, the Panthers won, and Star Wars says the whole Eagles, yep. And then Howie Roseman, you need to fire Kevin Poole because Nick is not going to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you remember Star Wars. I was live for that last night where we talked about that. I said they do need to part ways with Kevin Patullo. Wow, they still have a good offense around them to give them a chance at another Super Bowl. And for the Rams, though, speaking of teams with a shot to have another Super Bowl, the Rams came out and did what they needed to in this game. You had that late Matthew Stafford drive, one of the masters of the 2-minute drill, went for the go-ahead touchdown to win it. The Panthers did pretty solid in this game, but ultimately the Rams were just the better team, and they came out with the win. And now, to be fair to the Panthers, look, they put up a valiant fight. Bryce Young had 264 yards, and he did have a touchdown. And you did Chuba Hubbard. Didn't have the greatest stat line in the world, but he did have 2 touchdowns, and that played a key role in the Panthers' offense. Jalen Cooker had over 130 yards and a touchdown. He was the lead weapon in that Panthers' offense. And you had McMillan had a decent game receiving. So the Panthers' offense, they came to play, and they only lost by 3 points. So I do give them credit on that one. They had the home field advantage. You had Cam Newton there hyping up the crowd before the game, but ultimately the better team won. And being that the Rams have been on the stage before, Coach McVay's been to 2 Super Bowls, and he still got Stafford as his quarterback, who was his quarterback when they won it in Super Bowl 55 or Super Bowl 56, excuse me. Hey, they still got the talent to potentially make a run, and they did. But this was a really good game, and they even got a pick. The Panthers defense, Mike Jackson, he got a pick on them in this one. Kind of ironic that you got a guy named Mike Jackson, and then for the Seahawks, you got a guy named Kobe Bryant. But that's neither here nor there, though. But actually, this was a good game, and I'm actually glad this was more competitive than the odds said it was, because I know a lot of us were enjoying this game, because if this would have been a blowout as expected, which it did look like it was going to be early, this would have been a snooze fest. But fortunately, as fans, if football fans in general, we got a good game out of this one. And to be fair, Bryce Young did earn the respect of the Rams players in the post-game handshake. So I can say this for the Panthers. They did exceed expectations by even being on the stage, even though they really didn't deserve it because they had an under 500 record, but they were the least crappy team in the division, and they did finish stronger than the Bucs, even though they got swept by the Saints and lost the final game. Considering the Bucs only won 2 games after a 6-2 start, yeah, I'll say this at the Panthers were the more deserving of the 2 teams. And plus, the Panthers did beat the Rams in the regular season. Let's not forget that. Which is why I thought this would be closer than the 10-point odds. And ultimately it was. Panthers played a good game, but the Rams being more experienced in these playoff situations ultimately was one of the main factors. When you got a quarterback that started in a Super Bowl and won that Super Bowl, has numerous playoff starts, going against a Panthers team that's had most players haven't been on this stage before, ultimately the Rams were going to win out in this one. But it's a good experience for the Panthers, and I think something they could take going into the offseason. Maybe they're able to get another good player to sign with them during the offseason. Maybe they get a player that's in the free agent market that's from the Carolinas that maybe wants to be closer to home that could maybe sign with them. I would have to look at the list of free agents and see who's from either North or South Carolina, but they could maybe get another player or two and maybe with this experience, get better next season. But good for the Panthers. But for the Rams, man, I'm actually looking forward to their divisional round matchup against the team who had a big comeback Saturday night right after this game at Soldier Field, that being the Chicago Bears. So now we get to see the Los Angeles Rams with Matthew Stafford, a potential MVP candidate, although I think Drake May will get it, and that Los Angeles Rams offense move on to the divisional round to play the Bears. But how did we get there with the Bears? Well, they had to come back against their heated rival, the Green Bay Packers. And at this point, I could either see possibly the Broncos or the 49ers possibly winning it all, because 49ers have been on this stage before. They've been here before, though, remember. They've had some deep playoff runs, and they've gotten to the Super Bowl. They were just a defensive collapse away from winning it in Super Bowl 58 2 seasons ago. And then he says he's got Bills and Rams. That would be a good matchup. I would actually like to see that one, too. But, I mean, actually, it's pretty wide open, man. It is at this point. But I could see the 49ers possibly winning it all because we know they have experience in these situations. And the Seahawks, Sam Darnold, I'm not sure about him in playoff situations. He's still too turnover prone for me to sell me as a Super Bowl contender. But back to this game. Now, speaking of turnovers, the Chicago Bears overcame an ugly start against the Green Bay Packers. It's good. They did, because early on it was looking like it was going to be another Packers win for the second time in 3 seasons as the 7th seed. But coincidentally, in Green Bay Packers fashion, just like their season, they started off red hot early, looking like this could be it. But then, fourth quarter, everything fell apart. Just like their season. First 3 quarters of the season, first 3 months, everything was looking great. But then the final month of the season, collapse and just barely made the playoffs. And that's exactly what happened to the Packers in this game. It was just perfectly fitting. Because here's a defense that got 2 interceptions down their star pass rusher they traded for before the start of the season. They were still up entering the fourth quarter, had a sizable 21-6 lead, and they got a pick late in the third quarter, which was their second pick of the game. And you thought after that, when the Bears worked all the way down the field only for Caleb Williams to throw that pick, you're thinking, yeah, this one's over. It just felt like that. But credit to the Chicago Bears, because shout out to Bo, Football Talk with Bo. He brought up a great point that I'm going to reiterate. The Chicago Bears could have easily mentally conceded and given up hope on this game. Because there's that psychological factor of, oh man, it's the Packers. It's the team that always has our number, which can be challenging to overcome. And then on top of that, you're going into the fourth quarter down by 10 plus points. It's easy to get caught in that mindset of, oh, this is the team that always has our number. They're doing it to us again. We're not going to be able to beat them. It's real easy to fall in that trap, but the Bears didn't. They overcame that. So I got to give them credit for that, having that mental fortitude to stay in the game all 4 quarters and not let what seemed like doom against the Packers again catch up to them. They actually stuck with it. This is kind of unlike what the Sixers did in Game 7 against Boston a few years back, where I think once Boston got a lead on them the second half, they let it get to their heads like, oh, here we go, Boston's got us again, and they just couldn't overcome it. But back on subject, fourth quarter was the exact opposite. Bears got it going. Caleb Williams had a couple touchdowns. And it's like, hey, that goes to show the old saying, it ain't how you start, it's how you finish, both in football and in life. It's always about how you finish. And the Bears finished strong enough. They came back and they won. You had DeAndre Swift had a 6-yard run, and you had Caleb Williams had 2 touchdown passes in this one, including one to his main weapon, DJ Moore, for the go-ahead score late. And the Chicago Bears, for the second time this season, come back and beat the Green Bay Packers at home. So, credit to the Chicago Bears for the win. We know there was that post-game handshake between LaFleur and what's-his-face, Ben Johnson, that just, it didn't really seem like, it seemed like there was a little tension between the two, which I know that Ben Johnson made a comment, I like beating Matt LaFleur twice, back when he got the job, when he got hired at his first press conference, and that was part of it. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if Ben Johnson's just putting on a persona. I don't know if it's head games with both the Packers and the rest of the league that's observing to try to put on this intimidating aura, kind of like Belichick did with the Patriots. Maybe he's borrowing aspects of that. But, I mean, outside of just them having awkward handshakes, there's really nothing to it. I mean, it is what it is. But I don't want to speculate about drama in the NFC North when I'm an Eagles fan. I just want to say this. I'd rather leave the drama on the field between the players. And that's what happened in this one. There was plenty of drama on the field between the players. And for the Packers, Matt LaFleur, though, I'll say this. He's kind of lucky there's a 7th seed, because if there wasn't a 7th seed, this would have been 4 straight seasons without a playoff appearance. So you got to start wondering about Matt LaFleur's, if he's going to be on the hot seat for next year. And speaking of that, Jordan Love, I can't really put this one solely on him, because he did throw 4 touchdown passes and had that hot start. But considering this is the 3rd straight year with Love, they went as a 7th seed, bounced out in the opening round. You got to start wondering about Jordan Love in the bigger picture. While I'm not putting this game on him, you got to look at the bigger picture and wonder, is Jordan Love the true successor to Aaron Rodgers? And not saying that he's a bad quarterback at all, but is he really the next true face of the franchise? So far, no. So far. But the Bears move on, and that means we're getting to see Bears-Rams divisional round in Chicago, which is going to be a good game. I'm looking forward to that one, because that was a good game. And speaking of good games, we started off Sunday with an electric game between the Buffalo Bills and Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, this was my sleeper game going into the week, and it delivered. Certainly, you had momentum change, couple leads. It got real tense there later in the game. There was even a point you thought maybe the Jaguars might get the win. Matter of fact, the odds actually had shifted at the last minute, but that didn't matter. Well, the game itself was where it counted, folks. The game itself was in one of those heavyweight playoff matchups that it was supposed to be. And the Buffalo Bills experience got the better of the Jaguars late, and ultimately they got the win as predicted. I'll say this, honestly, this wild card round prediction-wise was my best week of picks. It was my best week of picks, regular season and playoff-wise. So I'm at least glad of that, but I'm going to give credit to both teams. Hell of an effort. Both teams deserve a round of applause. I mean, the Jaguars, hey, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I feel like this game summarizes Trevor Lawrence, puts his ceiling into perspective perfectly, where sometimes he'll play excellent, but when it truly matters, Trevor Lawrence doesn't do what's needed to be that true elite quarterback. And I feel like his performance here perfectly put that into perspective. He had 3 touchdowns, but he also had 2 picks, including a pick late in the game that ultimately sealed the game for the Buffalo Bills and helped them move on to play the Denver Broncos. So I feel like this game summarizes Lawrence perfectly. He can be a good quarterback when he's on his game, but I just don't think he's a true Super Bowl contending quarterback, at least from what I've seen thus far. And don't get me wrong, Lawrence had a good season this year for sure. Under Liam Cohen, this was his best season. And so far between Cohen, Peterson, and Urban Meyer, Cohen's his best coach he's had so far. So I'll give Trevor Lawrence props on that. Good season, good run by the Jags, but when they needed it most, Trevor Lawrence didn't do enough to be that true face of the franchise. But I give the Jags credit on an excellent run and give the Bills credit for winning this game, for leading a game-winning drive, not to mention the Buffalo Bills borrowed from the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit in this one, which I'm not even mad at them for that. They used the tush-push for the go-ahead touchdown, which I'm not mad at them at all for doing it, man. They actually technically used it twice. They kind of used a variation of the tush push on the play to set up the go-ahead touchdown, the play beforehand, where you remember, like, they were trying to bring Josh Allen down, and you had like a few Bills players pushing the pile to push Josh Allen forward, and he almost got in for the touchdown. It looked like that play in the longest yard where Turley, aka the Great Collie, had the ball, and you had a bunch of people pushing him in the end zone. You had all the guards jumping on to try to make the tackle, and some of the cons pushed the pile forward. That's what that play to right before the go-ahead touchdown kind of looked like, the longest yard, but a little less theatric. And then they did capitalize on the tush push, which I'm okay with, because look, football is a copycat sport. I'll put it this way. Every team at some point, all the way from Pee Wee, Pop Warner, all the way to the NFL, at some point has borrowed a play from another team's playbook at some point. Every team from Pop Warner to the NFL, even the spring leagues, like the now defunct Arena Football, which I think is making a comeback, or the defunct NFL Europe, the UFL. They've all borrowed from other teams' playbooks. All 32 NFL teams have borrowed from a playbook. So I'm okay with that. If it works, utilize it. And it worked for the Buffalo Bills and played a factor in them winning this game. But that's all I got to say there. I'm perfectly okay with them. If it works, use it. I mean, sometimes copycat works, sometimes it don't work. It worked for Buffalo in this case, so credit to them. But credit to the Bills on a tough win. Josh Allen down the stretch did his usual thing. Couple running touchdowns, a passing touchdown, only got one sack. He was the star of this game per usual. So, standard business for Buffalo and a big win for them. But now the question is, can they keep that momentum going? Because now you got to go to Denver next week. And that's going to be a tough game, especially in Mile High, where, you remember, Mile High, the air is a lot thicker in Denver. It's a lot more difficult to play out there. And I'll give you a hint for the Bills. If you wanted to be smart, maybe go practice out in Denver to get used to the air. Because I remember the Steelers did that the year they won Super Bowl 40 when they had to play the Broncos on the road. They went out and practiced in Denver. They went there earlier in the week to get used to the air. I think that would actually be a smart move by the Bills. Broncos offense is, they are. They're very inconsistent. I'll put it that way. They're like a roller coaster. 1 week they're flying high. Next week they're down on ground, barely skating by. But we'll have to just see what wrong version of the Broncos offense shows up, which we'll talk more about that in a minute. Next game. I kind of talked about this one yesterday, but I'll kind of do the Cliff Notes version of it. I did it yesterday, talk about it from an Eagles fan perspective. Now I'm going to try to talk about it try to keep some of the bias out and try to talk about it objectively. Look, we saw a game. We had the 49ers, the team that's been resilient, overcoming injuries and finding ways to win games, versus the Eagles, who've been mostly healthy, but have let their poor offense shoot themselves in the foot time and time again. And that's what we got in this game, pretty much. 49ers lost George Kittle early, but did overcome it and still won this game. The Eagles offense, which started off okay in the first half, got in their way in the second half, continuing their trend of being the worst third down offense of any championship caliber roster that I've seen. And it bit them in this game. Because you talked about a game where the Eagles defense got to Brock Purdy a couple times, got a few picks. Yet come fourth quarter, when the offense couldn't move the ball, the Eagles defense got burnt out from being on the field. And the Niners had 2 long drives where they ultimately scored and won this game. So credit to the Niners. Their offense struggled, but from their perspective, hey, they let the Eagles' offensive flameouts wear down their defense by keeping their defense on the field. And eventually the Niners offense found their weaknesses and exploited it. And they basically found the hole in the Death Star, and they put the torpedo in it, basically, to use it for lack of a better term. But hey, congratulations to the Niners, man. They got the win, and they've done what they've done all season. They've had that next man up mentality. Every time someone gets hurt, they're not going to, no matter what the odds, they're going to just keep their head in the game and overcome. They overcame 2 picks, overcame losing George Kittle, and ultimately they won this game. Plus, they got a little tricky. They had the Jawan Jennings trick pass for a touchdown, helped them out. And even in this one, you had Saquon Barkley actually had a pretty solid game for the Eagles, but it just, the offense couldn't convert on third down. The Niners defense, they knew the Eagles were a weak team. I'll give the Niners defense credit. They knew the Eagles were a weak third down team offensively, and they took advantage of it. And they did enough to win this game. Now, for the Eagles, I think they should fire offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, because considering that this offense has most of the same talent as their Super Bowl run last year when they were on fire, particularly in the last 2 games of the season, the conference championship and the Super Bowl, to underachieve that much with this offense, it's a disgrace. Like, I understand if you're an offensive coordinator that doesn't have much talent, you get a few 20-plus point games a season. Okay, I could maybe give the coordinator the benefit of the doubt. But when you got a Super Bowl championship offense and you produce what you did, it's time for the offensive coordinator to go. And especially for us as Eagles fans, get rid of him while we still have a shot at another run, while we still have the talent there. But for the 49ers, hey, they're a much more structured team, and ultimately they came out the win. Now we get the 49ers-Seahawks rubber match, which I'm looking forward to that one in Seattle. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, moving right along, let's talk about the Patriots-Chargers. This honestly was not that good of a game, let's be real. I mean, the Patriots won this game, and kind of piggybacking off my rant about Justin Herbert a little bit. The Patriots offense was not that good. Drake May, now, to be fair, this was his first playoff start. And a lot of times quarterbacks in their first playoff start, they sometimes tend to struggle. They let the jitter of being on the bright stage get to them. Like it happened when Peyton Manning lost his first playoff start. Ben Roethlisberger struggled in his first and got destroyed by the Patriots the following week, his rookie season. Eli Manning struggled his first playoff start against the Carolina Panthers. So I'll give Drake May some benefit of the doubt. Not every quarterback plays great their first playoff start. Sometimes, you let the pressure get to you and you got to learn from the experience. And I think that's kind of what happened here with Drake May. But credit to the Patriots defense. They stepped up and they did what they needed to. They got 5 sacks, or 6 sacks actually, and ultimately they did what they needed, and they did enough to keep the Chargers offense from taking over the game. So the Patriots do get the win as expected, but this was honestly the most anticlimactic of the games. Now, some will say this final game was a bit anticlimactic. Maybe it was, and that was the Texans-Steelers. Now, I'll say this. Houston Texans, look, you proved again that your defense is elite and first class. So congratulations. DeMeco Ryans is an amazing coach, and you kept that win streak going on the road in Pittsburgh, where the weather was more favorable to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. But the Texans found a way to dominate on defense. But the offense, man, it's kind of rare that you look at the score, you would think I'd be coming on here praising the Texans. And 9 times out of 10, when a team wins 30-6 in the playoffs, I would praise them. But I do have to criticize the Texans offense in spite of the final score. CJ Stroud, man, what happened? 2 years ago, this was a guy that was looking like he could be a potential future MVP candidate. He looking like he was going to be the face of the franchise. Because he had that great rookie season. Texans had that run to the playoffs out of nowhere. They dismantled the Cleveland Browns in the opening round. The Ravens had their number in the divisional round, but it looked like the sky was the limit after that. And the Texans have made the playoffs back-to-back years, but C.J. Stroud has not gotten back to that form. And we saw last night 5 fumbles and a pick. What? Dude, if C.J. Stroud would have actually showed up and played even a portion of what he was his rookie season, the Texans would have probably dropped 50 points on the Steelers in this one. This might have been the biggest modern playoff blowout. This might have been like Jaguars-Dolphins from 99 in Dan Marino's final game, if C.J. Stroud played better. So despite the win, now you got to go play the Patriots, whose defense had a field day with the Chargers. Are you really sure that C.J. Stroud showing up and having himself and being able to handle that situation, considering how good the Patriots have been and considering they got to go to Foxborough, which is a tough place to play? I'm sorry. I mean, no offense to the defense, no offense to D'Amico Ryans, but C.J. Stroud might be the reason you don't win a Super Bowl. I mean, to be fair, I give credit to where credit's due. Christian Kirk, Joe Victorious, Marks, both had good games on offense. Christian Kirk was the highlight of the game. And prayers up to Nico Collins, because he got his bell rung. I mean, he got his bell rung when he was carted off, which looks like a concussion. And it looks like as of right now, he's in doubt, but I don't see him coming back. Not after the way his head landed on the field, because especially nowadays with concussion protocol, they're not going to clear him to play. I mean, back in the old days, Nico Collins probably would have went back in the game. Because even it's funny, Troy Aikman on commentary was pointing out that he was going to go back on the field, but the Texans medical team had to redirect him out. Back in the day when Troy Aikman played, he would have just gone back in the game and would have played the next week as if nothing happened. But obviously it's a different era of football now. I don't see Nico Collins playing, though, against New England. But prayers up to Nico Collins on a full recovery, because concussions are not a joke, man. They're really not. I mean, you look at Tua Tagovailoa for the Dolphins. You see how those concussions are affecting his game. You see how it affected Teddy Bridgewater. But the point being is, man, prayers up to Collins on a full recovery. And hopefully when he does come back, he's not rushed back into it. Well, if the Texans lose this game, then he's going to have a full offseason to recover. But that's another story. But shout out to the Texans defense. Great performance. And Aaron Rodgers, I'll say this. I think it's time for Aaron Rodgers to hang it up. He hinted at the idea was going to be over, that this was going to be his last season. And I'll say this. I mean, he did have a pretty solid season, 24 touchdowns, 7 INTs. I know that's not the full story, but considering what happened last year with the Jets. Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I kind of had a feeling he was concussed when his head hit the turf. It just looked like a concussion from that play. But now it has been officially confirmed that it is a concussion. So now we can definitely say for sure. But as I was saying, man, dude, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, I think it's time to retire. This was a better farewell tour than he would have gotten with the Jets. If he called it quits last offseason, he would have had that flame out with the Jets. And in Pittsburgh, he had a better farewell tour. He got his revenge against the Jets week 1, had a nice performance there. He had a 4-touchdown game against the Bengals. He had some moments where he flashed his brilliance, and he didn't do so as consistently. But then again, you're talking about a mid-40s quarterback. You're not going to get that on a week-to-week basis. But considering his age, he played good. So I think this is a respectable farewell for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he even hinted at the idea. He said his goal was to make the playoffs, which Rodgers won't admit it out loud. But I think in the back of his mind, he kind of knew, like, okay, realistically, I'm not going to win another Super Bowl at this point. I could just see the playoffs being a realistic farewell. And that's what happened. So either way, credit to Aaron, whether you like him or not, credit to Aaron Rodgers on a phenomenal career. And I do think he should call it quits while he can still go out on a respectable note. Granted, I know the final game wasn't that great. He had a pick, and the Texans defense swarmed on that Steelers offense, but it would at least be a respectable farewell in terms of the season. So the Texans will move on to play the Patriots, and considering how the Patriots played, I mean, there is a chance the Texans could beat them. It's possible. But I'll get more into that. So what I'm doing, just going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about the divisional round game. Stay tuned, folks, because we'll be right. We're going to have some more to talk about in just a minute. Alrighty, folks, I'm back after a quick break. Now, they talked about the wild card round. We recapped the 6 games. Now, we got the NFL divisional round coming up, and we got a good slate of games, folks. So, as promised, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And let's start this off talking about the Houston Texans. We left off on that note just before the break. Let's start with that one. So, we got the Houston Texans and New England Patriots coming up. Now, based off what we saw on the wild card round, there is a chance the Texans could beat the Patriots, especially if the Patriots offense has another suspect performance like they had against the Chargers, because that was not a Drake May MVP-like performance. And you got to wonder if because we've seen this happen before. We saw something similar. I alluded to Ben Roethlisberger's rookie season where they had the home field advantage. They beat the Jets in a close game where Roethlisberger did not play that well. And then come the conference championship at home against the Patriots, they got smoked by New England, and the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl that year. So the point being is sometimes rookie quarterbacks can struggle in their first go at the postseason. And we saw Drake May struggle despite the win to really get going. I mean, he didn't look awful or horrible, but didn't play great either. And considering how good the Texans defense is, if Drake May has another type performance like that, we could see a possible upset in Foxborough. We could. But on the flip side, the Texans offense is also a big concern. I mentioned CJ Stroud last week, or right before the break. I mentioned him about the last night, that performance against the Steelers. Despite the score, CJ Stroud's performance was not a reflection of the final score. He had 5 fumbles and a pick, and it just, he did not look like he looked like Bryce Young during his rookie season. I'll put it that way. It's a shame too, because if CJ Stroud was still, like I said, in rookie form, the Texans could have easily had home field advantage this season and going into the playoffs, but it's not the case. And that's the concern for the Texans in this one, because the Patriots offense has been more potent than the Steelers. And I don't know, this could be a toss-up game too, because the Patriots offense struggled against the Chargers to really get going. Gotta wonder, is it possible that, I don't know, this could be a close one. So I think this could be a lower scoring game. If the Texans but then again, the Patriots defense, well, they did get to Herbert 6 times, but that was against Herbert. And Arku says watching hoops and the playoff games, which that's definitely the one we'll have our eye on. The playoffs for sure, 100%. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's going to come down to whose offense can produce more in that game. And this could be a closer game, but I might lean toward maybe I could lean toward maybe the Texans getting the upset in this one. And as far as the other game, the Broncos versus the Bills, that's going to be in Mile High, which that's going to give the Broncos an advantage weather-wise, because normally we do see those games in Denver do favor the Broncos. Because, but the Denver Broncos are also all-time, they're 19-9 at home playoff games. So usually that mile-high weather gives them the advantage with that thicker air, but we got to wait and see. But at the same time, I think if you put that aside, the Bills are the better team in this situation, because with Bo Nix, I don't know what we're going to get here, because he had a respectable regular season. The Broncos had a great team regular season, but going against the Buffalo Bills, who've been in this situation before, I'm kind of leaning toward Buffalo to get the win on the road. Because while Denver has that somewhat of a home field advantage, they are vulnerable to defeat. We remember 2012, the Joe Flacco-led Broncos. Remember that infamous pass to Jacoby Jones to tie the game late, followed by the Ravens' interception in OT to set up the game-winning field goal in 2012. So what we remember. They beat them there. Remember, Andrew Luck and the Colts, who usually play in the Dome, beat the Broncos on the road. Divisional round 2014. So it's doable. We know that teams can go to Denver and win, but I got the Bills in this one, man, because, look, I mean, Josh Allen come playoff time, outside of really struggling against Kansas City, they've been able to win games on the playoffs. But even, to be fair, 2021, that game where Kansas City beat Buffalo put up a great offensive performance. It's just their defense couldn't keep up with Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce and company in that game. So despite the constant loss of the Kansas City, Josh Allen's been consistent in the playoffs. And I think that'll follow against the Broncos, who, despite being an excellent team, have never been on this stage before. And for a guy like Bo Nix, who's kind of iffy from week to week individually, I don't know about him heading into this playoff matchup. I'm not fully sold on him. So I got the Bills. I actually got the 2 road teams winning in the AFC. And I would have the Texans playing the AFC Championship at home, but I got the Bills winning that game. So we'll see if I jinx that prediction or not, but those are that. Now on the NFC side, it's going to be pretty good. Yeah, in some ways they are kind of similar. Except the Broncos are more potent on offense because they will, when in the right situation, their offense will step up and they'll take care of business. But the Texans' offense is just not sold on them. Now, as far as, hold on a second, I actually don't need these anymore, so I'm not even going to bother. But now moving on to the NFC side, I will say this. It's going to be interesting. We start Seahawks 49ers. That's going to be kind of an interesting game because I'll say this. If it were full strength 49ers, I would have the Niners winning this game because I'm not sold on Sam Darnold in the playoffs, despite the fact the Seahawks have home field advantage. They have an excellent defense, and they got Jackson Smith, Kenneth Walker. They got a good 1-2 duo in the ground game, but what can Sam Darnold do come playoff time? And you got to remember, even in that Week 18 game where the Seahawks beat them, the offense did not. They missed several opportunities in the first half to score points. They went for it on the opening drive and failed. They had 2 missed field goals. And, yeah, they had several missed opportunities to win that game more decisively. So, how will that translate into a rematch? Now, the main thing for the 49ers in this one, I think their big key to victory, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey for sure. No George Kittle. It's going to rely on Christian McCaffrey. But remember, last time he went against the Seahawks, they shut him down. So what's going to happen this go-around? That could be the X factor, though. So, but without George Kittle and with still those injuries on the Niners defense, I might lean towards Seattle just for that reason. But at the same time, the Niners have made it this far despite the injuries. There's a reason they've made it this far. Most teams with the Niners type of injuries would have been done by now. They would have either missed the playoffs with a subpar or below average record, but not the Niners, though. They've made it this far for a reason. And I think against a Seahawks team whose main weakness is Sam Darnold in high-pressure situations, I could see the Niners maybe winning this game and letting the journey go one more week. I could see them maybe going one more week, and maybe they get the upset over the Seahawks, but I think the conference championship will be their final boss for this season. But I think, I would say this. I would say maybe the Seahawks are more the Lions of last year, where they are the home field advantage team. They look like the best team on paper, but come playoff time, they struggled under pressure. And Washington had the big upset over them. Jared Goff took a step back and he looked like the type of guy who he proved his critics that say he's not a top 5 quarterback correct in that game. And at this point, during this year, there were times Goff proved those critics correct again. But I could see where you're coming from. The Lions had injuries. But I think that's going to be interesting, though, because, I mean, the Niners, the performance against the Seahawks or against the Eagles wasn't a phenomenal performance. But then again, most teams that beat the Eagles beat them in lower scoring, sloppy offensive games. And the Buffalo Bills were just one blocked extra point away from not going for 2 and kicking the game-winning extra point. So a lot of the Eagles per games have pretty much been that way. So I'm not going to necessarily hold that against the Niners as a weak point. But the Seahawks, I think the Niners could win this game in spite of it. But I think the conference championship, it'll catch up to that. But I think this could be a good game. I still got the Niners just squeaking out the win. And then the final game, we got Rams and Bears that I'm going to go over. That's an interesting game, though, because now experience leans toward the Rams, of course, but I could also see the Bears. This kind of low-key has Washington of last season, but with less likely to fall off next season. I could kind of see that, where it's for a lot of players, it's their first time on the stage and they make a deep playoff run. I could potentially see the Bears maybe beating the Rams in this one. I mean, it's going to, because all season long, the Chicago Bears have found ways to win. And Ben Johnson, he's got this team mentally tough. Something that the Bears have lacked for years. Something that they never had with Eberflus or Nagy. Even when they had decent talent, they just didn't have that mental fortitude to close games. And Ben Johnson's got that with them. They got it against the Packers. And that Bears defense, I think the defense for the Bears could help them out in this game, because here's the thing. The Rams are, despite Matthew Stafford's brilliance, he's been prone to making mistakes, particularly later down the season. And we know that Bears defense has been pretty good all season long. They've been getting turnovers, and I could see maybe them doing the same here against the Rams. And don't get me wrong, it's going to be a close game either way. I think this is going to probably be the most competitive game of the four. It's going to come down to the wire. I could see either one of two things happening. Either Matthew Stafford leads another 2-minute drive, kind of similar to what happened against the Panthers, and the Rams experience gets the better of them. Or Chicago Bears just take the momentum they've had from the regular season and the comeback against the Packers and utilize it to upend the Rams. I do think the Bears are going to get the close win in this one, so I see them as the one home team that wins. And I'll go out and say it. I could see the Bears beating the 49ers in the conference championship just because of how banged up the Niners are. So I think I could see the Bears, maybe the Bears and Bills going to the Super Bowl, and the Buffalo Bills getting their first Super Bowl win. Now, we'll see if that actually happens, or we'll see how long it takes me to jinx that one, but I'm going to go with that one as of right now. I'll go with the Bills to win against the Bears based off the way it looks, but I truly believe the game of the week is going to be that Bears-Rams game. You got so many elements going for you. You got Matthew Stafford, one of the better quarterbacks of his era. Not the best, but one of the better quarterbacks who's already got a ring looking for a second ring. You still got Puka Nacua, one of the best receivers in the game. Devontae Adams, who's a good number 2 option at this stage in his career. You got a solid run game. A young Sean McVay, who's still hungry for more. Hungry for another ring. You got a Chicago Bears team rejuvenated. I mean rejuvenated with Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams playing the best football of his career. Starting to be what a lot of Bears fans thought Justin Fields was going to be. This year, he's become that guy. You got DeAndre Swift with a team that knows how to utilize him to his strengths. Having one of the better seasons. You got solid defense, guys like Edmonds, Montez Sweat, CJ Gardner-Johnson. When he plays and when he's on the field, he's still questionable with a concussion. So we don't know if he's going to play or not. But when he's on the field, he's motivated. He can make a difference. And whether he plays or not, we'll see. So you still got team players on the Bears that have a really solid defense, a team that knows to get takeaways, a Rams offense, hungry for another run, a Chicago Bears team that you can never count out. There's just so many intriguing elements, a lot of possible lead changes, potential late comeback, potential game-winning drive at the end, maybe possible overtime. I mean, there is a lot of possibilities for a lot of dramatic, on-field dramatic twists and turns. So I'm going to go with the Bears to win this one, but it could be a close game either way. You're probably going to have some split opinions on who does end up winning this game, but ultimately, we got to wait and see. And since we're on the subject of divisional round picks, later tonight at 8 p.m., you're going to have NFL Pick'em's divisional round edition with me and Agent Warrior X, where I'm going to reiterate some of the points I made about these 4 games, along with Agent Warrior X's perspective. So you can tune in for that, get a different view of that one as well. So that should be fun. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to some of these divisions. So I'm looking forward to that game the most. Arku says he's glad it's a little bit earlier. Yeah, that's good too it's good because then you get to see more of the game. Yeah, and that's certainly, like I said, it's the game to watch. So I think the NFL did a good job with the time slot there, making sure that people get to tune in to see it. So that's going to be the divisional round. But we're not done yet. We still got to switch gears a little bit. We got something else to talk about. We're going to switch sports to Arku's other sport, basketball, and we're going to talk. We got some NBA news to talk about. It happened on Wednesday, one day after episode 42, where there was the big trade. You guys already know which one I'm going to talk about, and let's get right into it. So it happened. It had been rumored that Trae Young was going to eventually get ousted. The Atlanta Hawks were going to move on from him. It had been talked about. There had been all these potential rumors. And Arku says he always stays up for the Sunday night games. It's right. And yeah, we're going to see about that one. But yeah, it's going to be a good one, I'll say that. And we saw, though, in the NBA, we had some interesting news. Now, is this the biggest game-changing trade of all time? No, not even close. But it is an interesting trade nonetheless. Trae Young to the Washington Wizards. That one, about a month ago, you probably wouldn't have seen that one coming. It did within the week, 2 weeks ago, meaning within the week prior to the trade, the rumblings started to pick up that maybe Trae would end up going and be on the move to the Wizards. And ultimately, though, it did happen. It was rumored, but it finally happened. So, ultimately, it's official. But I was shocked with this trade, though. So, the full details. Trae Young to the Wizards, and you get CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert to the Hawks, which, for the Hawks, I got to say this. If you're going to do that, you're going to move Trae Young, get something more in return. Get a pick or something. Now, I know that the Atlanta Hawks, they're not, they do have a halfway decent roster around them. You got decent piece. You got Porzingis, Zachary Rasheed, Dyson Daniels. You got a pretty decent team, but you're still not fully in the mix yet. So it's like, I don't know. It's just, I thought they could have at least gotten a pick in return. And I've noticed this too. You've had, in the past 2 seasons, you've had the Dallas Mavericks and Atlanta Hawks traded their star guard. And neither time did they get like a real pick in return. And the Hawks being 9th in the Eastern Conference, they're still mid as far as NBA teams goes. And you still got, remember in the East, you still got a healthy Sixers, Orlando Magic, Toronto Raptors, who have a better than expected team, Boston, the Knicks, and the Pistons. So for the Hawks, you still got a pretty tight race. Not to mention the Bulls are they're kind of right on the same level as the Hawks, which is not a good thing for Atlanta because the Bulls are just the playing at best team. I don't know you. Oh yeah, you got that was funny, the Riot Comedy short, which I'll say this while you're on that subject. For those of you that don't know, if you're watching, Riot Comedy has an Instagram page. I sometimes share their shorts from time to time and give them credit for it. They did one after the Trae Young trade where it was Anthony Edwards, Luka, and Jalen Brunson by a casket, all implying that Trae Young's career is dead now that he went to the Wizards. And then you get the funny part where Trae Young's like, I'm not really dead. What are you guys talking about? Why are you ignoring me? And then Jordan Poole comes in and goes, that's because the Wizards are the place where players' careers go to die. And Trae Young got defensive saying, no, I'm going to prove I can lead any team to the playoffs. And Jordan Poole's like, stop lying. You did it for the money, which is kind of a parody of the implications a lot of fans are giving about this trade, that they feel like Trae Young went to the Wizards for the money, which On paper, that's what it seems as though. Because if Trae Young really wanted to be the guy that led a team to a big run, why would the Wizards be the main destination you would go to? Like, if that were the case, wouldn't you want to go to a team maybe in the East, like try to go to a team like the Raptors, who are still pretty solid, or maybe a team like the Magic, who maybe just need that one extra guy? Maybe out West, a team like the Suns that maybe just need that extra piece. Like, if Trae Young's goal really was to go to like a championship caliber team or build a championship caliber team, wouldn't those seem like more realistic destinations to do that? But he went to the Wizards, which kind of does imply that maybe Trae Young's really doing this for the money. Which I understand that. You want to go make that money and get paid. I don't blame you for doing that. I don't fault you at all. But ultimately they didn't do. But ultimately that didn't happen. So I think he went for it for the money, honestly, because he wants the bag. Because I don't see why else he would volunteer to go to the Wizards. I mean, maybe there is some ego involved in it too, where ultimately Trae Young ultimately does. Maybe he does want to go somewhere else. But I don't, maybe he does think he can actually lead the Wizards to a run. Maybe he's got his ego in there too, and maybe that's part of it too. But you're going to the Wizards, who are 14th in the East, mind you. They're one game behind the Nets for the 13th spot. They're pretty much going to be a lottery team this year. Now, maybe that could benefit the Wizards in the long term. You got Alex Sarr, who could, in a few years, be something big. You get a lottery pick. Maybe you got something going in the future. But it's the Wizards, man. This just seems like a cash grab for Trae Young. And it just seems like the Hawks just wanted to dump Trae Young and get him out off the roster. They just saw the Wizards as a dumping ground, pretty much. And that's pretty much the story of this trade, because I really don't get what they're doing, man. It's just like, oh, man. But I'll say, okay, but hey, we'll just have to see how this plays out. I mean, I'm sure Trae Young, stat-wise, will be great. I'm sure if you got Trae Young in your fantasy basketball league, good for you. He's probably going to have some great fantasy performances being the main guy on the Wizards when he's on the court. So that might be helpful to fantasy owners with Trae Young on their team. But as far as an individual player goes, I'm just not really feeling this trade as far as a needle mover for either team. This might be a legit lose-lose trade for Trae Young, the Washington Wizards, and, I mean, maybe the Wizards could benefit in the long term, but this is a lose-lose for Trae Young and the Hawks, I feel. Because what are the Hawks getting in the long term? Look, NBA teams, if you go and trade one of your star players, at least get a haul in return. At least get a pick, even if it's a second-round pick. Just get something in return pick-wise. Atlanta Hawks. So I feel like the Hawks screwed up. And they screwed themselves over by not getting a pick in return for Trae Young. At least something, anything. And ultimately, big mistake by the Wizards. But before we go real quickly, though, we're still in the NBA. Let's talk about a few teams. Because the Los Angeles Lakers have been kind of an interesting team. They've been sliding in the West a little bit. They've gone from looking like a contender to now being, what are they? They're the 5 seed, but they've gone 4-6 in their last 10. They are on a 3-game losing streak. Now, I've heard some LeBron fans try to indicate that maybe LeBron needs to get traded, which you could just consider this my bonus rant of the week, honestly, because that's so stupid. All right. Maybe it's not so much LeBron needing to be traded, but maybe, he is in his 40s after all. I mean, the fact that LeBron's made it to 23 seasons is pretty impressive. And look, in recent years, he's still been a good player for his age. For a guy in his early 40s, he's still a solid player, but LeBron James is just, he's not really the guy fit to lead a team, to be the lead guy anymore. I know LeBron may want to still be that guy, but realistically, his performance just isn't there to lead a championship run. Maybe a run to the play-in or the playoffs as the lead guy, but not the guy that's going to lead a team all the way to the promised land. He had his opportunity. I think had the Lakers not gotten injured in 2021, they would have had a shot at going back to the finals. But that was kind of LeBron's like real last shot at leading a championship run. The year after COVID, but injuries kind of wrecked that. So LeBron James, look, still had a great career, but he's just not that guy that's going to lead a run. It's not necessarily so much him needing to be traded. It's just maybe it's time to just move on. Maybe this is LeBron's farewell tour and he calls it a day. I mean, I'm trying to remember. Maybe I did see it and I just don't remember off the top of my head. But I guess I'll check out their Riot Comedy's IG page after I'm done with this stream. I'll check it out later. So but I just, I think LeBron fans, I know you want to hold on, but honestly, it's just that LeBron maybe needs to move on. He's not the lead guy anymore. And you want to say that Luka's better than LeBron? Currently, yeah, Luka is better than LeBron currently. Now, career-wise, Luka still has a few MVPs and a few finals wins to even come close for career, but currently Luka Doncic is the number one guy on that team. And another reason they're sliding is Austin Reeves has been out. When Austin Reeves was playing, he was a good option. He's been averaging 26 points, 6 assists per game when he plays. Austin Reeves has been a pretty good player and pretty underrated. I mean, Austin Reeves is if you're going to try to build a contender in the future, you want Luka and a healthy Austin Reeves to be those guys for the future. I mean, and I think that's been part of the reason for that slide. He got injured in that Rockets game Christmas Day, and he hasn't played a game since. And you've seen the Lakers slide a bit. And plus, when you're in that tough conference out west, you still got the Thunder, the Spurs, the Nuggets, who I'll get to the Nuggets in a second, because they've been actually kind of doing the opposite in recently. They've been winning games without Nikola Jokic. I mean, they did. I mean, they struggled a little bit early on, but they did. Once Jokic initially got injured, they kind of struggled. But they did manage to beat the Raptors. They did manage to beat the Sixers and the Celtics last week. And they did beat the Bucks on Sunday. So I say this. The Denver Nuggets are just a better all-around team than the Los Angeles Lakers to start while we're still on that subject. Because, yes, I mean, they've still lost a few games without Jokic, like to the Nets and them. But the fact that they've been able to win against the Sixers and Raptors, who are still solid teams in the East, and they beat Boston on the road, that goes to show you that the Denver Nuggets have a good all-around team. I mean, their record's kind of so-so without them, but here's the thing. If you can win some games against teams like the Sixers, Celtics, and Raptors without them, then imagine what you can do with a healthy Jokic. Matter of fact, look at where they were. They were right on top of the Western Conference before Jokic got injured after Christmas. And they're still without him in a respectable position, which that's just telling you right there that when Nikola Jokic comes back and he's healthy, watch out, because that Denver Nuggets team is going to be dangerous. So watch out. I mean, they still got Tim Hardaway Jr., Aaron Gordon are still there. They still have some pretty solid pieces. Bruce Brown's back. You got Cam Johnson. I mean, you still got Jamal Murray, still decent player from time to time. You got some players that can still deliver. I remember Zeke Naji when he played last week on Monday when I went to Xfinity Mobile to see the Sixers Nuggets. He had a solid outing against the Sixers. So the Denver Nuggets, if they can play this good without Jokic, they could be a threat come playoff time without him. So I think I wanted to point that out because some people have been kind of sleeping on the Denver Nuggets and how good a team they are. Now, can they make a serious championship run? Potentially. But that's all going to come down to, is the team healthy come playoff time? Where do they land seeding-wise? Do they get a favorable opening round matchup? Because sometimes that favorable opening round matchup could make a difference in terms of how far you go in the playoffs. But at the same time, you got a loaded Western Conference. You got the Minnesota Timberwolves, who've had 2 runs to the conference finals, even knocking the Nuggets out 2 years ago when they were defending champions. Last year, beating the Los Angeles Lakers, and who was it? Did they beat the Nuggets last year, or was that? No, I think they did beat they beat the Warriors, and it was the Thunder that beat the Nuggets, if I remember correctly. Arku, you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but the T-Wolves could always be that sleeper team because they've been to 2 conference finals. Then, of course, you got the OKC Thunder, the defending champs, are the favorites to repeat as of now. And you also got the San Antonio Spurs, who were the new contenders, which adds a little more competition to the mix for the Nuggets. So, I mean, actually, for anything, the West is kind of open come playoff time for teams that could potentially make a run to the finals. You could see the Thunder repeating, the Spurs potentially. The T-Wolves could potentially get over that Western Conference Finals hump if they get there again. The Nuggets, if healthy, could make a run. There's at least 4 teams that could potentially make it to the finals out west. I mean, the Lakers, I don't think so. I think they need another younger player on that team. I think when LeBron retires, they need to go get a younger guy, and they could make a big 3 with Reeves, Doncic, and a younger player and maybe make a run. Since they beat y'all last week, I thought they would stay afloat. I mean, well, they did beat the Celtics, and and they did that on the road too, so they've been a respectable team, man. So I'm not even really pissed about the Sixers losing that game because the Nuggets are they're still 26-13, pretty good team, and they could be contenders if healthy, but it's going to be interesting to see. And there is one more thing I want to talk about too, actually, because it's been interesting with the Sixers with Embiid, because Embiid's healthy and they've been winning some games lately, and Joel Embiid's actually been playing pretty good with Maxey and Edgecombe. And even last week in that game against Denver, Embiid was the lead scorer. He was the lead scorer against the Wizards. And so Joel Embiid, now that he's healthy, I think, and he's actually getting more playing time, he's shaking off the rust from being in and out of the lineup. You're starting to see what a healthy Embiid can do alongside Maxey and Edgecombe. I just think this trio could actually be a good trio if they stay healthy. And that's the big if. Because last night, Maxey led the way with 33, but Embiid still had 27, and Edgecombe had 15 of his own. Paul George, he's still a solid role player, but they're giving him way too much money is the problem. So with this Embiid healthy, the Sixers do have the potential to make some noise in the Eastern Conference. Now, as far as being contenders go, I want to say yes, but realistically, look, we've been down this road before. We've rarely seen Embiid come playoff time be 100%, and there's always usually something along the way. They always run into a better team, like either Boston or Miami or the Knicks last time they were in the playoffs. And with that Eastern Conference, you're going to have Boston, you're going to have the Knicks, And you're going to have Detroit Pistons now as they've emerged as contenders in the East. So I want to say yes, but realistically, this might just be another second round exit, which isn't necessarily bad, but after a while, you become stagnant and there's nowhere to go but down after a while. So I do think the Sixers could be a good regular season team with this trio being healthy. But as much as I want them to win come playoff time, I just realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if this were another second round exit. But the big question is, can they stay healthy, number one? And that just goes for all these guys. Indeed. Maxey, Edgecombe. Because remember, Maxey got injured late last season. Now, to be fair, he was in a tougher spot last season. I mean, he's not pushing himself to the brink of burnout as much now as he was as it was last season, but there's always that risk. And then there's always Paul George. He's a solid role player, but can he stay healthy? That's a big question. But it's going to be interesting now because we're getting closer to the trade deadline. The NBA is picking up a little bit. So we're definitely going to have to see what happens. And then the next thing we're going to, there is the possibility of Ja Morant getting traded. It already happened with Trae Young. There's been rumors of Ja getting moved. I've had a poll question on both my community page and my Twitter asking if you think Ja Morant's going to get traded or not. A lot of people think he will get traded this season, but ultimately we got to wait and see on that one. But this is a good time if you're a football and basketball fan. The NBA is just starting to pick up and get more interesting. You got the NFL playoffs in the divisional round. We got a good slate of games coming up. So I'm looking forward to it, man. So Arku, Star Wars, everyone else that tuned in, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week, episode 44. We'll talk about the divisional round matchups, preview the conference championship, talk about some few of the other big stories that happen in the NBA throughout the week. So stay tuned for that. And if you're a fan of NFL Pick'ems, tonight on the Hardcore Sports Network, me, Agent Warrior X, are going to talk about the divisional round at 8 p.m. You'll see some of my takes and get Agent Warrior's point of view. So we'll get to add some additional point of view to it. So with that being said, y'all, have a great day. If you don't catch me later, peace, but I'll see you next time.